Hello, everybody, and welcome to College Football Game Day Live. We have finally reached this season after a super duper long off season. Excited to be here with you this morning. I am Thor Nystrom. I'm sitting across from a man who needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyways. This is Mike Farrell, Mike Farrell Sports, the godfather of recruiting. Mike, how you doing this morning?
Good. It's finally week 0. Games aren't sexy, but we got a lot to talk about.
We sure do. And on this show, basically what we're going to do is every single week on Saturday at this time when we go live, we're going to go game by game through the entire card, give you guys opinions on the sides, on totals, DFS, props, the whole gamut. So we don't really have time to futz around. So we're going to get right into it. Mike, let's start. Let's go across the pond to Dublin, Ireland. First kickoff of the day today, 11:30 a.m. Central. We have Nebraska and we have Northwestern. It's a study in contrast, isn't it? You have two teams that won 3 games in the Big Ten last year, but you have totally different dispositions heading into this game. And you could sort of denote this by the way that the head coach has treated this offseason of all the player movement. On the one side, you had Scott Frost, where it was like this YOLO style of roster reconstruction and coaching staff reconstruction, where it's just he was remaking everything. On the other side, Fitzgerald, who has all the job security in the world, he felt okay rolling it back with a lot of the same people. How are you viewing this game going into today?
This is a must-win for Scott Frost. I think it's probably the most crucial game in his tenure. And you're right, YOLO. He has to. Because he's got one life left. Fitzgerald has as much job security as Nick Saban. If they lose this game in Ireland, and I thought I heard you do an Irish accent, which was pretty cool. If they lose this game, he's not going to – I doubt he's going to get fired on the plane ride home or left on the tarmac. But they have a schedule set up where they could be 4-0 going into Oklahoma, and they have to win this game. They're both projected, bottom of the West in the Big Ten. On paper, they should win this game. They're favored, but I don't know. There's pressure. Sometimes pressure makes you tight, and, we'll see. We're going to get to our picks, and I'll spoil it. I'm leaning towards Northwestern covering, not winning, but covering this game.
Yeah, and so the line right now, it actually shifted. This line has gone, just monitoring the market, it's sort of gone up, down, up, down, up, down. You go back to like a week 10 days ago, it was closer to like Nebraska by like 14. And then it had dropped all the way as of like yesterday, day before, down to like Nebraska minus 11. I wake up this morning, it is now hopped back up to like Nebraska minus 12. So the market's doing sort of interesting things with this one, batting the line around. It'll be interesting as we get up to get to kickoff. Is this one going to get to Nebraska minus 13? Or is the Northwestern line going to start to come back in? So we have the 12 on the one side. We have a total of 51.5. So you're leaning on the side. Which side again, Mike?
I'm leaning towards Northwestern covering because that number is too high for me to lay. If you're Nebraska, all the offseason changes you talked about. Okay, there's a lot of personnel on this team. You might have a slightly dumbed down playbook. This isn't the team. They scored 56 against Northwestern last year. So I think that's why the line is so high, because they just dominated them. But I'm also gravitating towards the under. I think it's going to be a little bit of a mistake prone game. I think Northwestern is going to try to slow it down. Cam Porter, Evan Hull, a lot of those guys in the backfield. They don't want Ryan Helinski to make a lot of mistakes. And Nebraska could play tight. They could feel their coach feeling tight. They could enter this season, 3-9 last year, but all their losses were within double digits. And so they played close, but there's a lot of pressure for them to take the next step. So I've got Northwestern and the under. I'm more confident, honestly, on the under. I think this is going to be a low scoring game.
So what's interesting here is my lean. I initially leaned on Northwestern because when a couple of days ago, my line was very close to what the Vegas line was at that time. The changes to this thing, my adjusted line has moved to Nebraska minus 16.7, and then you have the Vegas line at 12. So I now have an overlay of 4.7 points on Nebraska. I'm not going to bet it though. I don't want any part of the side of this game. So it's still a stay away for me. But what you said about the total is interesting because I'm on the same side as you. I'm on the under of that one.
You're adjusted down. Yep.
Yeah. The live total right now, 51.5. My adjusted total on that game is 50, but that's just in a vacuum. That does not account for the fact that you're traveling across the way, you're going to Europe, you're playing in this, stadium that you've never played in, et cetera. What I've heard there is the playing surface in Dublin today, the grass is very high. It's atypically high for a college football playing surface. What I have also heard from my little birdies is even though Fitzgerald and the Northwestern staff heading into the offseason, they were super bullish on Ryan Hilinski, talking to their media contacts of we expect Ryan to have a really good offseason. My little birdies tell me that Ryan Hilinski did not have a good camp, did not have a good offseason. He's going to start for them anyway, but Northwestern is going to go to a even more of a ground and pound ethos this year. You have one of the Northwestern they don't have any above average units on their team except for the offensive line, which just happens to be awesome. Like Peter Skorowski, of course.
Yeah.
Yep. He's going to go in the first round, and you have an above average offensive line. And then the other, decent part of the offense is now the running back room because Cam Porter comes back. Yep. You add him to Evan Hall. You also have Andrew Clare there. I mean, randomly, you actually have a deep room. And so the thought is, especially in this first game, that Northwestern is just going to run. I'm with you, Mike. I'm not touching the side. We have different leans on the side, but we both like the under. Correct?
Yeah. Nebraska's. I looked this up, and I hope it's right. They've gone under in 7 of their last 10 games on Saturdays, and Northwestern's under in 13 of their last 19 games. So I mean, these teams play to the under number. And I think, like I mentioned, it's mistake prone. I mean, you're going to have a lot of new personnel getting used to each other on the Nebraska side of things. You're going to have a lot of 3 and outs, I think, and punting the football and field possession and field, sort of gamesmanship from Fitzgerald. So I like the under. I like a conservative game on both sides. I still have that Northwestern. I mean, they put Irish logos on their helmet. That's extremely pompous if you're going to go out there and suck. You have to play harder. They've got a coach named Fitzgerald. They got a coach named O'Neill on their staff. They have to play up. So that's why, it's stupid reasons to cover. But I like Northwestern. You just can't lay that many points if you're Nebraska. I'm sorry. I don't know who you think you are, but you can't lay 12 points to anybody. I don't care.
It is a lot of points. And at the top of the show, I teased that we're going to talk about DFS and props. In this game, there's a couple different individual player props that I really like. We're going to talk about that at the very end of the show when we hit the props. But I just thought I'd toss that out. Mike, moving on to the next game. These we only have the one game in that 11 o'clock slot. So Nebraska and Northwestern sort of get the kickoff to themselves this year. Then we go into the 3 o'clock slot. We have Central Time or the 4 o'clock slot Eastern. We have 2 different kickoffs. Let's start off with Connecticut, Jim Mora Jr., his debut at Connecticut, traveling to Utah State, the upstart from last year. We have one of those inflated lines on this one. So this one's kind of an interesting handicap. Utah State is a 26-point favorite live in this game. Do you have any thoughts on this one, Mike?
Well, and I know you're going to trend it down, but I've made a living over the last few years betting against Uconn, no matter what the spread is. They just are horrible. They suck. I mean, they've got a solid running game, and there's a different attitude at Uconn. Jim Mora's brought a lot of excitement. I live in Connecticut. I can feel it. But, what's excitement when you have no chance of winning? I mean, this was a horrible football team last year. I don't expect much else. They're traveling across the country. Logan Bonner lost a lot of his targets, but is still going to put up monster numbers against that weak secondary. I like the over because I think Utah State's going to destroy them. And I like them to cover. And I don't think you do, but 27, week 0, 27 is a lot of points. So many things could go wrong. You haven't played football in forever. But UConn, I think, is just underrated as to how inept they are as a football program.
Well, we'll see if Mora can change that, right? Because I think it's also underrated how much UConn hated Brady Etzel. So I think merely just changing that, and then now you have Mora, and then of course, as you know, Farrell, one of the really interesting things that Mora did after he got hired by UConn, he decided to do that thing that retread coaches sometimes do, where they skew super young with their assistant coaches, and so it seems like at least the players there, for whatever it's worth, that they really like the coaches there now, whereas they just absolutely despise the previous thing.
No, everybody hated Randy Edsall, including myself, and I get it. And Jim Moore's a likable person, and all that love and continuity. There's music playing at practice, I've been told, and the offense and defense are getting along, and everybody seems to. They still stink. That's the problem. I mean, if you put me, you, and 9 other players on offense, and we love our coach, we're still going to suck. And UConn's going to suck. So I'm laying the 26.5 or 27. I'm taking all season long. This is one of my theories. You take the worst team you can find, and I do this in the NFL as well, and you just bet against them. You bet the line, doesn't matter how big the line is, all week. I did it with Temple way back. Remember when Temple was horrendous in the Big East? Horrendous. I did it starting then. 20 years later, I'm doing it again. I'm going to take the line against UConn every week and make money, and I'm doing it this week.
I can't believe the Jim Morris slander that I'm hearing from that end.
I like him. He's a nice guy, but come on.
Yeah, just speaking to what you said about the total. So live right now, the total on this game is 59.5. My adjusted total on this game is 64.5. So I definitely lean with you on the over on this one. You have a couple different things going on with that. Utah State, their bread is obviously buttered with the quick hitting passing game of they're trying to control the ball and the clock with that. And UConn, their worst thing arguably as a team is their pass defense and secondary. They were actually decent up front last year. They had the kid who went on day 2, Jones. And they have a couple other guys up front, but their secondary was not very good. So, you would think that maybe Utah State can move the ball there. And then I have not heard who UConn has named as their starting quarterback. I do have some interesting information about other people Jim Mora has named it as starters. We'll get to that when we talk about DFS and props, because I think that will be profitable information. But if he goes with Taquan Roberson, for instance, from Penn State, you can at least try to shorten the game by, they can grind the clock as well. Utah State's defense should not be very good this year. For that reason, I'm a little bit surprised that they're laying 26.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, if you really aren't a gambling degenerate, and I am, I'm going to bet every game just for fun to make them more interesting to watch. But, lay off the points and go to the over because, as you mentioned, both these defenses aren't very good. I don't care who's starting at UConn. They'll be able to be in, throw mode and score 14 points. And then you assume, Utah's going to get you that over with their point total. I'm not sure, as you mentioned, if it's going to be the Penn State transfer Roberson or not, but it doesn't matter. There's going to be turnovers in this football game. There's going to be short fields. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for points to be scored. So I'm with you. Okay, stay away from the points if you don't want to do my theory of betting against UConn every game. But, I'm kind of smart when it comes to UConn. I live right here. But take the over in this one for sure.
Okay, so both Mike and I like the over. We disagree on the side. Mike is on Utah State. I'm on UConn. Let's flip to the other 4:00 Eastern game this afternoon. This is an interesting one too. The Fighting Brett Bielemas of Illinois are hosting Wyoming. Craig Bull's squad. This line, which was only -11 like 36 hours ago, has moved all the way up to Illinois -14. Line movement that I frankly am very surprised by, and I don't really understand. What's your take on this matchup, Mike?
Under, and we'll get to that number in a second. When it comes to the points themselves, I think 14 for any Brett Bielema team is a lot to lay. It's a very, very low-tempo offense. Illinois is going to play a low-tempo offense as well. They're breaking a new quarterback, lost a lot of weapons. This is going to be a slow, old-school football game where there's going to be a lot of, strategy involved with flipping the field. And, you're not going to see a lot of aggressive third down play calls. So I like the under here. If I had to pick a team, for the points, I would take Wyoming because I just don't think you can lay that. Illinois wasn't a bad football team last year. They're 4-1 against the spread in their last 5. But they don't start off strong. They're 2-5 in their last 7 in August. And he likes to play sort of a conservative brand of football. Tommy DeVito, I'm not sold on. He regressed a bit at Syracuse. So I'm laying the under, and I'm taking Wyoming if I'm forced to take the points.
I want to ask you about Tommy DeVito really quick. To go on a bit of a tangent. I'm really interested by the marriage of Tommy DeVito and Bielema. It doesn't really make sense to me outside of Bielema just sort of he doesn't have access to the high 4-star recruits coming out of high school. So, like they got Sitkowski before. Now you get DeVito, who flamed out at Syracuse. I don't know if that's what explains it, because it didn't seem like a super duper natural fit to me. DeVito's more of like, you would think of him as more of like a guy who would run more of an up-tempo spread type system, and Bielema has the exact opposite of that. And one other thing that was really interesting about this is you were mentioning this when you were talking about the game. Illinois and Bielema going back years and years and years, the ethos has always been slow the game down, control the clock, super duper methodical. I didn't know what to make about this, but over the offseason, multiple different times, Brett Bielema told the media that he intended to play more up-tempo this season. And I don't know, and this is what I want your take on. I don't know if that's something that he had promised to DeVito, like in recruiting, and he felt like he had to sort of follow through with it, at least with his public comments, whether he meant to or not, or whether this is something actually genuine that he's meaning to go through with. It just seems sort of odd that a team like Illinois that plays, that has played that way and that has an offensive line that averages 320 pounds, that now you're going to try to have 80 offensive plays per game or whatever. What was your take on that?
It's interesting because here's what happens is if your offense is boring, and we've seen this in Michigan with Jim Harbaugh, and you bring in a new coordinator like Josh Gaddis, who wins? Do you give the playbook to Josh Gaddis, or is it really just Jim Harbaugh's conservative, pro-style, ground and pound offense? And that's what we're going to see here. Now, Bielema is a defensive coach by nature, but we all know at Wisconsin, at Arkansas, he's been pound it out, grind. We're going to be bigger and physical, and we're stronger than you, wear you out in the fourth quarter. Worked at Wisconsin, didn't work at Arkansas because there's a little bit more speed in the SEC West. Barry Lunny comes in from UTSA as the new offensive coordinator, and there's a lot of promises, as you mentioned, to Tommy DeVito. Not that he was a big popular guy in the portal. It's not like everybody wanted Tommy DeVito. But, Frank Harris at UTSA, they were, a top 25 team at one point, really exciting offense, putting up a lot of points. And I think that's what people are pointing to, that this offense is going to be more exciting. My thing is with old school coaches like Bielema, when things go wrong, you immediately regress to what you know. So the first turnover Tommy DeVito has on a first down pass, you're going to see them pull back and start to get conservative. So this is going to be kind of a battle between the head coach, who knows Lunny very well. He was the tight ends coach at Arkansas, and his new offensive coordinator. And the head coach always wins. That's my theory.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see both what they just named DeVito officially the starting quarterback. It's going to be interesting to see what does he bring to that offense. Is there anything, above what we've seen with Sitkowski, Brandon Peters last year? And then also, does that manifest in these whole scale sort of schematic changes? In this game, I'm on Wyoming for sure. Plus 14 is way too many points for a game like this. Yep. My adjusted line on this game is Illinois -5. That's only numbers in a vacuum. It doesn't take into account the specific matchup of the 2-1s. It's just like their power ratings in a vacuum, right? We talk about this in like UFC of like styles make fights, and the style of this specific matchup it's going to make for a close game almost assuredly. The last Craig Bull, as you know, always has good defenses. His teams typically play good teams close. Even worse teams, they just play in a lot of close games. The last 3 seasons, there has only been 3 times where they have been beaten by even more than 11 points, much less by 14 points. There's also the thing of both these coaches are bad against the spread as favorites, but they're both good as underdogs. Bull is 35-25 as an underdog since 2015. Last year, Bielema was 6-3 against the spread as an underdog. He was 1-2 against the spread as a favorite. And the reason why do you want the points with those guys? Because they're trying to drag everyone either up or down to their style of play. They want everyone to fight the fight exactly like they do. Right. And so I think, in the past, at least, that has led to suppressed scoring, closer games that are decided late in the fourth quarter. My adjusted total on this game, the live total right now is 43.5. Yeah. This goes to your point, Mike. My adjusted total on this one, 36.5. Now this is based on, last year's numbers and some historical numbers and stuff like that. This could toss out the window if Bielema indeed goes with tempo for the first time ever, because it would go against that. But if they do play, both these teams play like they have played in the past, I would love the under for sure.
Yeah, Wyoming was 113th out of whatever number there is now as far as FBS teams in tempo. That's really, really slow.
Yeah.
And Bielema was 93rd last year. So you're talking about 2 turtles. It's run the ball, flip the field, punt it away, play defense, and repeat. And like I said, I think they will come out trying to show the fan base and the boosters and recruits a little bit more of an exciting offense at Illinois until the first thing goes wrong. And then Bielema is going to pull it in and reel it in and play his conservative game of football. The under, Illinois, last 10 games, 8-2. The under comes in. 19 non-conference games, the under 14-5. The under it reeks of the under for any Illinois game. And then you throw in what Wyoming lost an offense. Yeah. And you're talking about a defensive struggle. This could be a 13-7 game.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if especially, again, by historical standards. So that one's going to be the first game where you and I both agree on. We're both on Wyoming plus the points, plus the 14, and we are both on under 43.5. Mike, now we're going to jump to 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. The next game on the docket is Charlotte at FAU. Florida Atlantic has been installed by the books as a 7-point favorite. This one's interesting in that some of these other games that we've talked about, the lines have jumped around. This one has remained dang static, dang consistent for the last couple of weeks. It's sitting right on that 7 number. It is not coming off of it. And then as far as the total, the live total we got on that game right now is 59. What are your thoughts on that one, Mike?
Yeah, I've seen your adjusted, and you and I are going to disagree on this one a little bit. And we don't have to spend a ton of time on this one as much as Wyoming, Illinois, Northwestern, Nebraska, and Vanderbilt Hawaii, because those are the 3 marquee games that people really talk about. But if you're talking about, just against the spread, I hate the 7 number, hate it. But I'd still take FAU. And the reason I gravitate a little bit to this, it comes down to difference maker at quarterback. And N'Kosi Perry's not a world beater. And Willie Taggart hasn't had tremendous success there. And these are both 2 very similar football teams with poor defenses. I wouldn't touch the number because of that 7, but I would touch the over. And it's interesting to me that yours skews downward a little bit, because I think these 2 defenses are bad. Really bad. And I think this is going to be a shootout.
Yeah. And, you're talking about the defenses that as far as the overall teams, there are 2 teams that both started out well last year and then just absolutely cratered down the stretch. And so it's going to be interesting to see, when this game kicks off, which of these 2 teams picks itself up off the mat. That's probably the biggest thing that I'm going to be looking for. You mentioned you sort of already teased my sort of interest.
I love giving away your stuff early.
my interest in Charlotte. It's tepid interest because I'm not going to bet this one. This would be more of a lean and it's because of my numbers. I have FAU minus 3.7. So I do have an overlay on this game, but I got some of these same questions that you're sort of alluding to, Mike. I don't really like either of the defenses. Down the stretch last year, I couldn't get my finger on the pulse of either of the two teams. And now you're sort of putting them together at the start of this season for this August kickoff game. Even though my numbers lean Charlotte, and I certainly lean Charlotte on the side, for those reasons, I'm not going to touch this game. You were talking about the total. It's at 59. My adjusted total on that game is 55. I'm probably not going to be playing the total either. That game for me, it's a more of an informational sort of a game for me. I will definitely be tuning in, but it's going to be to get information for future weeks betting.
Yeah, I wouldn't go crazy on it. I mean, if you're going to think about something, to me, like I said, the over, because they're just very inept defenses. And this is kind of comes down to, to me, I have this quarterback theory, which has worked in the NFL, and it doesn't work as much as college football. But, when you're stuck in a game and you don't know what to do, you gravitate towards the better quarterback because they dictate. And to me, Florida Atlantic has the better quarterback.
Man, Chris Reynolds catching strays out here.
A lot of them.
So we're moving on to the 2 hours later then. So we had the 6 o'clock kick. Now we're at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. North Texas at UTEP. This is another game where I'm staying miles away from. The line on this one live right now is North Texas minus 1.5. My adjusted line on it is UTEP minus 2.2. Mike, do you have any thoughts on this one?
It's kind of a throw it up in the air, see what happens. The quarterback for North Texas is 38 years old.
Austin Noon, former minor leaguer.
6 seasons with the Yankees, 5th season in college football. I think he's older than me. He is what he is. He's not going to change. They did finish strong at the end of last season. I absolutely love KD Davis on defense, just an absolute monster, and I think he can affect the game. And Jacob Cowing is gone from UTEP, and he was a huge part of their offense. They lost 70% of their catches and receiving yards from last year. So I'm leaning a little bit towards North Texas in this one. I wouldn't touch it, but I do like them to cover. And then, man, I'm looking at the under. I just think this is a game where it sort of reeks to the under a little bit with all those losses and just a non-dynamic offense. And I just think it's going to be a low score. Last year was 2017, and that was with a little bit more offense. I think this is going to be a similar score, and I would take the under.
Yeah, I run the projections for both the sides and the totals for every game. And in some games, you'll have these big discrepancies on one or the other or both. This is one of those games where I was almost spot on. My numbers on both sides were very, very close up until my spread ended up adjusting a little bit yesterday where it toggled to UTEP being the favorite. Previous to that, I had North Texas -1. And then the line was right there. And then the total on this game live is 54.5. My adjusted total on it is 55.5. So it's my numbers in Vegas are right in lockstep. And the way that I see the game, it's very similar. Basically, I think the way that you worded it was you sort of throw it up and sort of see what happens. From last year, UTEP was this team where I guess in UFC, I'm going to use my second UFC metaphor of the show, but in UFC parlance, you have this idea of the gatekeeper, like a guy who's not a championship contender, but he's the guy that the prospects, if they beat, then that means that they're good, whatever. That's UTEP. Last year, they went 7-0 against teams that were ranked 93rd or lower in my final power rankings of the season at the very end of the season. And they went 0-6 against the teams that were ranked higher than that. So they could beat all the basically the lowest of the low of the FBS. They beat all of them. And then anyone better than that, they couldn't beat. North Texas is right on that line of my preseason numbers. They're ranked 97th. Now, you could make the argument that North Texas is going to be better, maybe even appreciably so, that they could jump up 10, 15 spots on that. Specifically, their receiver room it may get nasty this season. Roderick Burns is already a big-time standout. Jair Shorter, we know, is a standout as long as he's healthy. He suffered the season-ending injury early last year. He's back now. If he can stay on the field, and that's been a big if for him, but if he can stay on the field, you have the stud outside receiver to add to Roderick Burns. And then another one he's had issues staying on the field, Tommy Bush, is back as well. If those guys both can stay on, again, if they can stay on the field around Roderick Burns, and then the quarterback, whether it's Oon, whether it's Grant Gunnell, and then you add all that stuff to what is also one of the G5's deepest running back rooms. Yeah. Now that Oscar Attaway is back, he joins those 3 or 4 guys that were in that rotation last year. All of them were great on a per touch basis. So they have a lot of different things going on. So you could make the argument that they're a little bit better. UTEP actually has more returning starters. So you could also sort of make the argument for them on that side. But like you mentioned, UTEP lost Cowing. So there's a lot of different things going on with this. For me, it's just that the margins are too close on this one. I'm looking elsewhere. So yeah. You and I are both passing on that one.
Yeah, I'm not. The best game that North Texas played last year was when they beat UTSA at the season finale, and they were able to run the ball and control the ball, and then they fell apart against Miami of Ohio in the bowl game. You just don't know what team you're going to get here, and with UTEP, with Cowing gone, you don't know what team you're going to get there either. So stay away from it. When you do have 2 teams with so many question marks, you could pop maybe a few bucks on the under, but that's I wouldn't touch this game.
Yeah, Seth Luttrell was thanking his lucky stars that UTSA had clinched the division already when that game started.
Well, that's true too. It was a little dumbed down team they faced, but they won. All that matters.
They absolutely did. Moving now to 10 p.m. Eastern this evening, 9 p.m. Central. This is like this game is the crappiest matchup ever, but for me, it's a game that only college football degenerates could love because it's actually a fascinating matchup. Jerry Kill makes his debut at New Mexico State. The Aggies host Nevada, who basically suffered the equivalent of like a college football death penalty without sanctions this offseason, just like the whole thing got blown up. Live right now, this line has absolutely plummeted, like from what it was even 2 weeks ago, certainly from earlier this summer. As of this morning, it is all the way down to Nevada now is only -7.5. And the way this thing is trending, because this line was in the double digits like 3 days ago. The way this thing is trending, by the time we get to kick, this might be beneath the touchdown. In fact, I might even bet that this line is at 7 or lower by the time we get to kick up. So you have that. Nevada is still favored, of course. And then the total of this game is 48 live. Mike, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this isn't a great matchup, and New Mexico State is just a team that I don't want to throw them in the Uconn territory, but they're just, not good.
You could.
And I like to reserve that for Uconn just because I'm so used to it.
Special place.
Yeah, but they're just not a good football team whatsoever. But what's happened to Nevada, over the last year, you got new everything. And so you don't even know what football team you're going to be putting out here compared to last year. But can you really take an Aggies team? They weren't horrible on defense. Their offense was absolutely inept. But their 2 wins last year, South Carolina State and UMass. UMass is in Uconn territory for sure. So I wouldn't touch it, but I can't in any good conscience put money on New Mexico State in any way, shape, or form, despite the fact that Nevada's lost everything. And they're really breaking in. Might as well just have pulled the plug on their program and plugged it back in. And New Mexico State's defense is solid, but there's something about just me that cannot lay any money on New Mexico State in any way, shape, or form. If I gravitate towards something, it's the under, because New Mexico State does have a pretty good defense, and Nevada's offense is just all over the map. I would take the under here if I was really, forced to bet this game, but I wouldn't touch the points.
So the total is my adjusted total is pretty close to what Vegas has. Vegas has 48 live right now. My adjusted total is 46.5. I probably would lean under on that. I'm not going to touch the total. The bet that I like on this game is New Mexico State. I am that sicko that will bet this game and bet the money line too as well.
You're a sicko. You're sick.
The fighting Jerry Kills, Mike. The fighting Jerry Kills, I think, are about to upset the Nevada Wolfpack. You talk about the losses for Nevada. Jay Norvell goes to Colorado State. He takes most of his coaches with him. I'm getting there. Started Timmy Chang went with him initially, but then Timmy Chang got the offer at Hawaii. Then we'll start with the NFL draft. They lose Romeo Dubes and Cole Turner in the NFL draft, Carson Strong as a UDFA, and then they lost dang near 20 guys in the transfer portal. I think it was like 18, 19, like something like that. And like you mentioned, a rash of them went to Colorado State. And then when those guys started to leave, everyone started jumping. Some programs, they lost a lot of guys that were like the younger guys, and lower on the depth chart. The problem for Nevada was like everybody that left was on the too deep. And so the issue that they had, like when they were in the spring, you had a couple different issues. They had linebacker issues like all throughout the spring where they were so short on linebackers. They had problems like doing team drills because they couldn't put together a defense. And then like even still now, they have walk-ons sprinkled throughout that too deep. So there is definite issues on the Nevada side. You have all these different new players because they also had to sign a whole bunch of guys, through the transfer portal. Seems like the kid that used to back up Spencer Sanders at Oklahoma State, Illingsworth.
Yeah, Illingworth, yeah.
Yeah, that he's going to take over at quarterback. Are they going to try to stay and do the air raidy stuff that Norvell used to do? Or are they going to now – their best offensive player now after all the defections is probably the running back Toa Toa. Are they now going to try to be more of a running team? Because, they're also going to be bad. You try to protect the defense. We don't know any of this because, like, everything is so new. But basically my take on this is I think, I still think, I'm with you. New Mexico State is one of the 5 worst teams in the nation. No argument. But my argument is Nevada has now joined them. They have now moved on to the block. Nevada now, after this offseason, is also going to be one of the 10 worst teams in the nation. It's just the market hasn't caught up to that yet because they haven't seen it with their own naked eyes. And so Nevada was laying double digits before on the road, in this game. Now it's, 8, 9 points, whatever. But I still think you're getting more than a touchdown with a home team that's just about as talented as the road team that they're facing. Both teams have new staffs. I'm riding with the fighting Jerry Kills.
You're an irresponsible human being. You really are. I mean, that's irresponsible.
I don't think so.
They beat South Carolina State and UMass last year. I mean, they lost 56-16 to Kentucky. Alabama beat them 59-3. It could have been 18. And I know this isn't Alabama, and I know Nevada is not good. Nevada is going to play very conservative football. They're going to not try to turn the ball over. The air raid's gone, I believe. And you've got a pretty good New Mexico State defense, comparatively to how bad their offense is. But I'm just saying, don't touch the line. I mean, you're an irresponsible human being because you're going to touch the line, and that's degeneration. Absolutely. The under, it reeks the under just because New Mexico State's horrible and Nevada is decimated. So, that's what I would do. But yeah, man, I love it. I love your irresponsibility. I love the fact that you would take actual hard-earned money and put it on New Mexico State, because if you tell that to a rational human being who knows about college football, they would say you're crazy. Can't. But
scared money don't make money.
Well, that's true. And we're going to see. This is going to be extremely interesting because this game is horrible matchup, right? But now you and I are disagreeing on it, so I'm going to pay attention to it more and maybe talk a little trash on Twitter if I'm right, and you can do the same if you're correct.
Oh, you can count on it, bud. Yeah, we will be. Yeah, you could definitely count on that. Moving to the last game of the day. This is the seventh FBS versus FBS game that we're going to get today on the opening of the college football season. Interesting matchup. Vanderbilt is traveling, 4,500 miles from Nashville to Honolulu to take on Hawaii in Timmy Chang's debut, the native son, favorite son of Hawaii, his debut for the Rainbow Warriors. The live line on this game is Vanderbilt -9 is looking like in Vegas right now. Interesting that Vanderbilt is getting this much respect in the market, I think. What are your thoughts on this one?
It's a really, really horrible football team laying a lot of points to me. It's almost, we've looked at a few games here, right? Nebraska's a 3-9 football team laying more than double digits. Illinois is not a very good football team laying 2 touchdowns. And I gravitate towards Hawaii covering this simply because you can't lay 9 points if you're any team named Vanderbilt coming off a season last year where you lost your opener to an FCS team. They've got a little bit more of a dangerous offense with Wright versus Seals. Clark Lay is a rah-rah guy, and he knows defense, but man, I can't in good conscience lay 9 points if I'm betting Vanderbilt. So I like Hawaii to cover. They're not going to win, I don't believe. And I like the over in this too, because you want to look at 2 horrible defenses. This is really a matchup. I mean, Hawaii's defense, they could give up to Vanderbilt. They could give up 40 points. And that's really, really hard to do when you're playing Vanderbilt.
1,000%. Yeah, absolutely. This, and just speaking to the total live right now, 45.5. My adjusted total on this game is 58. So, that's, I got an overlay on the over. I would also lean the over. I also think on both sides, what is the Hawaii offense led by? It's the passing attack. Vanderbilt's secondary is one of the worst in the FBS objectively. And what is Vanderbilt's offense led by? Now that Ramon Davis is back, it's going to be the running game and then manufactured touches for Ramon Davis as long as he stays on the field. I probably shouldn't joke about that, but he's had all sorts of durability problems. But as long as Ramon Davis is on the field, he is going to churn out yards, and they are going to put up points against the Hawaii defense. So I think, your thought on the over, I think that's a smart thought. On the side, not only do I lean the same way as you, I love Hawaii in this game. This is my biggest overlay of any game today. Again, the live line of this game is Vanderbilt -9. My number on this game is Hawaii -5.
Right.
I got a difference of 2 touchdowns going the other way. Yeah. Someone's going to have to explain to me from the sports books how they arrived at putting Vanderbilt as a touchdown plus favorite on the road against a team that is objectively, we were talking about the neighborhood thing with New Mexico State and Nevada. I don't know how you can look at the rosters of Vanderbilt and Hawaii and put Vanderbilt's significantly ahead of Hawaii's, which is what you have to do to justify favoring Vanderbilt by this much when they're on the road. I don't get it.
Well, again, there's 2 reasons. Ready? The first is Vanderbilt got a first place vote in the SEC East, so you're clearly disrespecting them. And number 2, Clark Lay said he's here to win national titles, man. He's here to win a national title. He ain't here to go 1-11 again. So, the confidence out of Vanderbilt has to be exuding, and Vegas must feel that. But I agree with you. Money line is interesting here, because your projections have Hawaii winning outright, and the money line is going to be a real juicy one. I still think Vanderbilt somehow squeaks this game out, just because I just can't imagine in a world where but they lost to Middle Tennessee last year in the opener. I don't know. Just gut tells me they're going to win the game, but not certainly to cover. But the money line is extremely intriguing here, and the over is intriguing to me. Now, if you want to parlay money line and over, I wouldn't be objective to that.
No, I like that a lot.
You're going to. I can tell right now. I saw it in your eye. You're going to parlay the hell out of this game.
I'm already looking up the. I want to see what the money line is, because I didn't have that right in front of me.
It's not huge. It's probably like plus 220, something like that. I don't know.
It looks like we got so this is the consensus. At individual books you'll have to see, but it looks like the Vegas Insider consensus right now is Hawaii is plus 285 on a money line.
That's a really juicy, good money line to take.
Not bad. You probably get what like 4.5 to 1. Like if it was juice, like that against the total as a 2-leg parlay, something like that. That's not bad, Mike Farrell. That's something I'm gonna think about.
I might do that now. I mean, because this 9 business, as you mentioned, 9.5, I see at some places, makes no sense to me whatsoever. Now, if you want to be a complete degenerate, I mean, obviously money line and then you go over, and then you could take some props in there because, Wright's going to put up some numbers. I think, rushing, if there's any props for him rushing, that's the one thing I think he's going to be able to do. They're not going to let him try to throw a lot, I don't think. But that's my segue into props. You could also completely degen with props here if you wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I do have a couple angles, for that stuff. The one thing I wanted to say to close out that game is the thing, because we've been mostly talking about it from the Hawaii side, that if you were going to look at it from the Vandy side, they do have more returning starters. They have 14 returning starters. Hawaii doesn't have many, in part because we talk about rosters hating their coaching staff. Hawaii's despised Todd Graham as much as UConn's hated Randy Edsall. And so there was some defections there. And then, like I said, Ramon Davis is coming back for Vanderbilt, and he is their best offensive player. I had posited in my write-up of this game, I have to believe that the Vanderbilt coaching staff thought long and hard this offseason about essentially putting Davis on a pitch count per game, a touch pitch count, because with Vanderbilt, it's so enticing. For me, Ramon Davis is a legitimate NFL talent. Like, I think if that guy is healthy, he's going to go around 4 or 5. I think he's a slightly better prospect than Keyshawn Vaughn, for instance, coming out of the same school or whatever. But that's only if he's healthy and doesn't have the durability problems. And of course, he's got the durability problem. So it's very tempting for them. They have the poor offensive line. Last year it was decent-ish, but they lost Will Steed. Nick Saban comes in and is like, yeah, you have an all-conference offensive tackle. We're just going to pluck him because I lost Evan Neal to the NFL. Yeah. So Vandy's offensive line is going to stink again, and all that sort of stuff. They're probably thinking, very enticing would just give Ramon the ball. But they were doing that at the beginning of last year, just every single play giving him the ball, and he broke down very, very quickly. So that's going to be interesting. And it's also going to be interesting to see who Timmy Chang puts out at quarterback. Publicly, I do not believe as of right now that he has announced. There's a 3-man race for that between Brendan Schrager, Kamon Cooper, and Joey Yellen. So that's going to be interesting. They're going back to the run and shoot. So, coming out of what they had for Todd Graham. Okay, so we are both on Hawaii.
Yeah.
We both like the over.
I think Wright can take a little bit of that load off of Davis with his running ability as opposed to Ken Seals. Ken Seals is a pocket passer. And so you can give Wright more of those. Mike Wright, you can give some of those scheduled carries and maybe lighten the load for Davis too. So that'll help. But again, this is going to be a game that they try to go out to Hawaii and survive. They won't cover. Whether they win or not is going to be interesting. I'm kind of leaning now towards the money line because you got me convinced.
So to close the show out, wanted to do a quick segment on DFS and props. And for today, I had some just things that caught my eye going through the DFS card. So I'm going to start with that, and then I'm going to toss some props at y'all that I have played personally. So a couple of interesting things with the DFS plays. Now this is on DraftKings. It's just so we all get uniform with that. A couple guys that should be in most of the lineups, especially on a day like today where it's so condensed. Like Mike. In fact, Mike and I were talking about this before the show. Mike. People don't know. Like, people know Mike is like the godfather of recruiting, and this recruiting. Mike's, as you can tell from watching this show, Mike loves to gamble, and he's also a big DFS guy. And so looking through the the DFS stuff and stuff like that. You go way. We were talking about like how with this card on a day like this with less games, you only have like the 6-game option on the front end or the 5-game option on the back end. I think on a day like this, to find the guys where it's the really depressed market price or whatever, where they're going to start or they're going to have a bigger role than could have been anticipated when the prices were set. You must put them into your lineup without even thought. So 2 guys for people out there like this. Mike, when we were talking about Uconn, how they're going to establish the run and stuff like that. This is the same thought I had over the summer, because ostensibly their best returning player on offense was a kid named Nathan Carter, their running back. This was one of the bigger stunner, well, probably the biggest stunner I think so far of the week 0 depth charts that have come out or announcements like that. Jim Morris said that Nathan Carter is not starting a running back. They're starting this kid named Robert Burns. I know quite a bit about college football and quite a bit about the rosters. I've never heard of Robert Burns before, but he's going to be starting for them at running back. So, and Robert Burns is only priced at $3,000 flat on DraftKings. So against a crappy Utah State defense, he probably has to be in your lineup just because of that. And another one, same vein, UNLV, the leader for that job heading into the offseason was expected to be Chad Magyar. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. He did not, but Magyar didn't win it. Aiden Robbins has been announced as their starting running back. And on DraftKings right now, he is $3,300. So Magyar was priced at $5,000. Nathan Carter was priced at $5,600. You can get the actual starters for way cheaper than that. So those were a couple things I was looking at. You see anything that caught your eye?
Well, Robert Burns is funny because he was an Under Armour All-American back in the 2017 class. He had Ohio State, Alabama offers. Gulliver Prep kid regressed every year. Every year. He was this freshman phenom in high school, and then he was a sophomore. He was okay, and then he got worse and worse and worse. Went to Miami, never panned out there. Dropped from us to being originally a high 4-star to a 3-star, and just hasn't put it together ever. And so maybe at UConn he can have a little bit of rebirth there. But, I just – the talent is there. Nick Saban doesn't offer you and Urban Meyer doesn't offer you if you're not talented. So he might be an extremely good value if you're looking at that. To me, I was looking at the quarterbacks, and I was putting together my roster. And DraftKings and others, can you please put together – please don't limit me to 6 games. Give me a full slate. Let me pick a guy at noon, but I also want to pick a guy at 10:30. I don't understand why this doesn't occur in life, but it should. So if you're listening out there, which I'm sure you're not, just fix it. But I like Casey Thompson. I think he's a value at $7,200 because this is a kid. Remember, before he hurt his hand, was really putting up good numbers in the Big 12. And he's a guy who can extend the play and move around. And I'm not saying he's going to put up monster numbers against Northwestern because, again, he's dealing with new personnel and he's getting used to a new system. But Mark Whipple likes to sling the ball around a bit. Mark Whipple took Kenny Pickett from being a conservative middle-of-the-field guy to a downfield bomber his last year. Led to a first-round pick. I'm not saying Casey Thompson does that, but I know he's going to take a few shots downfield, and they might. So he was a little underrated to me when it comes to value. He was the first guy that in that 6-game slot that I wanted to pick. And I agree with you on the running back values. Those are both extremely good running back values. I still gravitated a little bit towards Chase Brown, just because I know he's going to carry the load of Illinois, and I know Bielema is going to run the football a lot, and you're going to get value at $7,900 out of him. It's a little high. I get that. But Evan Hull's going to split carries. He's 6,300. You look at these other guys, you're splitting yourself with Cam Porter at 5,700. Chase Brown is my guy in daily fantasy that I'm going to say I want you to get 30 carries, and I think you could.
Absolutely. It's funny. 2 of the guys you mentioned are actually in my lineup that I tossed together, both Chase Brown and Casey Thompson.
You're going to win.
There you go.
Big money.
And Thompson, actually, when we get to props here in 1 second, he's going to be a guy I'm going to bring up again. Here's my lineup for anyone out there that's interested. I went with Austin Reed at quarterback, even though he's the priciest guy on the whole card at $9,000. He's the guy who's taken over for Bailey Zappi, and he ran Jared Dagey out of town so fast in Western Kentucky. Jared Dagey was like, oh my gosh, I thought this thing was going to be a cakewalk. Now Jared Dagey has to go all the way down to Troy from West Virginia. Austin Reed last year I believe he was D2 Player of the Year, correct, Mike? Or was it just final?
Florida, baby. West Florida.
West Florida. And Mike, you probably seen more of him than I have, but just watching the clips, that kid's got some juice in his arm. Sort of eye-opening.
Under-recruited heavily, and he's definitely going to be a great fit for that system because he's going to get the ball out fast, and they're going to do a lot of catch and run. So he's going to put up big numbers. A little pricey at $9,000 for me. If you're in that range, Logan Bonner, because UConn's so inept, might be tempting as well.
Well, but Austin Reed gets to go against Austin P.
Yeah, well, Austin Peay's horrendous, but he might be out of there in the third quarter.
Could be.
I don't think Logan Bonner is going to be out. I think if they're up 60-0 against Uconn, he's still going to be throwing the football.
The fighting Jim Morris better put up a fight for me. So I got Reed at quarterback.
Running backs.
Those are, it's the Burns and Robbins where I saved all the money, $6,300 combined for those two guys. At receiver, I could do a little bit more stuff. All these guys cost between $6,000 and $6,900. I took Omar Manning from Nebraska, Brian Cobbs from Utah State, the transfer in from Maryland. They have a lot of targets that vacated. A lot of them came from Tompkins that are going to have to be redistributed throughout that group. Cobbs could assume a whole big line share of them. We talked about how bad UConn secondary is. And then another transfer, Jalen Hall, was my third receiver, looking to pair him with Austin Reed. Maybe he starts out quickly, gets a little bit more targets in his first game there. Then and he was $6,600. My flex was Chase Brown. You mentioned it, $7,900, but I can spend a little bit more because I saved so much with the two running back guys. And then my super flex was Casey Thompson at $7,200. I wanted a quarterback there, and you hit on a lot of this stuff. Like this system is going to make this kid where it's that, the thing where you have the quick hitting passing game sideline to sideline, and then you start doing the levels. Now we're in the intermediate thing. Now we're going deep and, all that stuff. But it's a system where it's the pass to set up the run as opposed to vice versa. And so Casey Thompson, his statistical output is going to tick up here, which is a great segue for me to get into props really quick. Only a couple props that I bet this week because there wasn't many that were offered. I only saw 3 games that even had prop lines offered, period. Here were the props that I bet. I bet Casey Thompson over passing yards. I don't know what the line is live right now. I got 232.5. Thinking there is Northwestern secondary wasn't good. It was bad. It was rotten last year, and then they lost
Brandon Joseph.
Exactly, by far their best coverage guy. So you would think it'd be even worse. And then, like we just said, Casey Thompson now is going into a system that is very conducive for passing output. The next one. That one was more straightforward, as far and stuff like that. This one is more of a sneaky one of getting one over on the books a little bit. Nebraska's Ramir Johnson, when they set his over under rushing yards, initially it was set like in the high 60s. That thing has dropped all the way down to the high 40s now, and that is totally justified. I bet on it anyway, even a little bit lower, because they have been using him as the flex back, where he's in camp. He's been used this way, where he's motioning all over the place and then being deployed heavily and mostly out of the slot, not out of the backfield. He is going to get touches as a runner for sure, but it does not look like it is even going to get into the double digits for that. You might get a couple out of the backfield. You might get a couple jet sweeps and stuff like that. But the usage, it looks like it's going to be a lot more manufactured touches as far as quick hitting passing. Another bet in that vein, I bet a prop of Cam Porter to have more rushing yards than Ramir Johnson. I think that one is almost free money. And then the last one I did was, and I would also bet against Ramir Johnson, like rushing touchdown one. The last one that I bet was, I bet the Titus Swen over the number I got was 73.5 rushing yards. Xavier Valade is gone now. He transferred to Arizona State. Last 4 regular season games last year, when Swen and Valade were in a platoon, they were basically splitting 50-50. Swen averaged 14.75 carries for 103.25 rushing yards per game. Now Valade's gone, but that's not all, folks. Levi Williams, their quarterback, who was a dual threat, who stole a lot of rushing yards from that backfield, he is transferred now to Utah State. He's going to be across from Jim Mora today. And then also the stud receiver, Nair, he transferred to Texas. So what you had talked and when we were talking about the Wyoming game, about all the talent that Wyoming had lost. Titus Swen is the singular sort of offensive skill guy talent that they have coming back. He is going to be the bell cow this year. I like him to go over 73.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet too. And it's just, I don't understand in this day and age of 2022 and the level of degeneration that we've reached with legalized betting, why there aren't more player props. Just, I don't understand. I know it's week 0. I get it. but everybody wants to bet in every way, shape, or form. So when you look for these player props, and I was doing it last night, and you were too, trying to find them on different sites, it's just impossible. So I do like I like all your picks, actually, and I find it very interesting that you've taken two of the most disappointing from a talent perspective players over the last many years who have regressed in Robert Burns and Omar Manning. Omar Manning is a fanatically talented, unbelievable football player, and he just doesn't do anything. Just never gets it done. And this is Omar Manning's season every year. So it's going to be interesting to see how those two play for you today. I think Omar is going to get a lot of targets. Burns, man, I'm telling you, I've been disappointed by Robert Burns in every aspect of life since his freshman year at Gulliver. And that sounds harsh. I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm saying it just hasn't worked out. So if he puts up a monster day today, you're going to be a genius, because nobody on this planet would ever. You're probably the only guy who has Robert Burns in any league.
The only guy certainly that has Robert Burns that is going to be holding money line tickets for New Mexico State and Hawaii. I promise you that, Mike Farrell.
Yes.
And with that, we have hit the hour mark. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us on our inaugural maiden voyage of College Football Game Day Live. That is Mike Farrell, the legend Mike Farrell. I am Thor Nystrom. Again, thank you for joining us on our first episode. We're going to be back every Saturday this fall doing the exact same thing, except usually we're going to be going for an hour and a half. We're going to cut it at an hour today to get you guys out because it's a condensed card. Thanks again for joining, and we will see you next week.